Welcome to my channel, and this is Enjoy with Kitten Story. The tale of the oak and the willow. Of an ancient forest, two trees stood side by side, watching over the land with stoic grace. The first was a mighty oak, its branches wide and sturdy, reaching towards the heavens. The second was a delicate willow, its slender branches swaying gracefully in the breeze, bending low over a quiet stream. The oak was proud of its strength, for it had stood for centuries, weathering countless storms without yielding. "Look at me," the oak would often say to the willow. "I am strong and unbreakable. No storm, no matter how fierce, can bring me down. I stand tall and unwavering, while you, with your fragile branches, bend and sway at the slightest wind." The willow, however, never replied with arrogance or pride. It would simply sway gently, its leaves brushing the water's surface in silence. The willow knew something the oak had not yet learned, for while it bent and swayed, it never broke. Seasons came and went, and the forest saw many changes. Winters passed with biting cold, and summers arrived with blazing heat. Yet, year after year, the oak and the willow stood in their places, observing the world around them. One spring day, dark clouds began to gather in the distance. The air grew heavy and still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The birds fled from the treetops, seeking shelter from what was to come. Soon, the storm broke loose, with winds howling like wolves and rain pouring down in torrents. The oak stood firm, as it always had, its roots buried deep in the earth. It was unshakable, defying the storm's fury. The willow, as always, bent and swayed with the wind, its branches moving like dancers in a tempest. The storm raged on, and the oak felt confident, certain that it would survive as it had in every storm before. But this storm was different. The winds grew stronger, the rain heavier, and the very earth beneath the trees began to shift. The oak, though strong, began to feel the strain. Its mighty branches, heavy with water, started to creak and groan under the pressure of the wind. It resisted, refusing to bend, standing defiant against nature's onslaught. The willow, however, continued to dance with the wind, bending so low that its branches nearly touched the ground. It did not fight the storm, but flowed with it, allowing the wind to pass through its leaves and limbs. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest. The oak, unable to bend, had reached its limit. One of its largest branches snapped under the pressure, and soon more followed. The oak's proud form, so unyielding for centuries, began to splinter and crack. With a final earth-shaking crash, the mighty oak toppled, its roots torn from the ground, its trunk shattered. When the storm finally passed, the forest was quiet once more. The willow, though bent low, had survived. It slowly straightened its branches, its leaves shimmering in the morning light, as if untouched by the storm's fury. The oak, once the giant of the forest, lay broken and defeated on the forest floor. As the days passed, the animals of the forest gathered around the fallen oak, mourning the loss of the tree that had once been their shelter. But the willow, though often overlooked, stood tall now, its roots firmly planted in the soft earth, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. One day, a wise old owl flew down and perched on the willow's lowest branch. "You survived," the owl said, its eyes gleaming with understanding. "The oak, for all its strength, has fallen, but you remain." The willow, in its quiet grace, replied softly, "The oak was strong, but it could not bend. It resisted the winds, and in its defiance it broke. I have learned that to survive, one must be willing to bend, to move with the forces around them, rather than fight against them. In yielding, there is strength." The owl nodded in agreement. "Indeed," it said, "there is wisdom in your words. Flexibility and resilience are just as important as strength. The world is ever changing, and those who adapt, who flow with the tides of life, are the ones who endure." The willow and the owl sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun filter through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The willow knew that it was not the strongest tree in the forest, nor the tallest, but it had something the oak did not, a deep understanding of the balance between strength and flexibility. In time, the willow's branches grew thicker, its roots deeper, and though it would never tower as the oak once did, it became a symbol of quiet resilience in the forest. Animals began to gather in its shade, and the once overlooked tree became a source of peace and tranquility. Years later, when a new storm came to the forest, even fiercer than the one that had felled the oak, the willow stood strong once again. It bent with the wind, its branches flowing gracefully, and when the storm passed, it was still standing, unbroken and proud, in its own gentle way. The lesson of the willow spread through the forest. Even the youngest saplings took note, learning that true strength comes not from standing rigid against the world, but from embracing its changes with grace and resilience. And so the forest grew wiser, as did all who lived within it, carrying forward the lesson of the oak and the willow, that in life sometimes it is better to bend than to break. Moral of the story. The story of the oak and the willow teaches us a timeless lesson about the balance between strength and flexibility. While strength and endurance are valuable, they are not always the keys to survival. Often, it is our ability to adapt, to bend with the winds of change, that allows us to thrive in the face of adversity. Resisting life's inevitable challenges with rigidity may lead to downfall, but learning to flow with circumstances, like the willow, helps us endure, grow, and emerge stronger.